What's up, guys? Ben here, bringing you another video today. As you notice, I am not at home. I'm actually in Atlanta, Georgia. Shout out to Atlanta FaZe for hosting me for a couple of days. We're just here vibing. We're gonna do some content, watch the Super Bowl. I think they're celebrating Saturday night a little bit for their win last weekend. But anyway, enough about ATL. We gotta talk about Optic. We gotta talk about Vancouver Surge. Some breaking, unexpected news hit the timeline yesterday, and we got some additional intel today as what's going on with the Optic situation. Pred coming back apparently. And where's Huke going? We got maybe a little bit of intel, but it's a little bit unclear. Let's dive into all the pieces and lay it out for you guys where we stand right now in roster mania. All right, so I was driving to Atlanta yesterday, and it's like an 8.5 hour drive, 9-hour drive. It's pretty long. And halfway through this drive, you scroll down here Eastern time, about 4:04 p.m. So I was like getting pretty close to Atlanta, and I saw this hit the timeline, and I was very confused. I'm like, why are they? Because it was clearly Pred, right? You could tell by the head shape, the jersey. I'm like, why is Optic tweeting home period about Pred? Obviously, they got top 8 at Major 1. They were probably not happy with their situation, but it was weird to me. It's like, who would, if they're bringing in Pred, like who would they drop in? Like Kyler, aka Huke, was their best player on the weekend. Their star players underperformed, and Ken still got some things to work on. And then a few minutes later, about 10 minutes later, we saw this tweet hit the timeline. Thank you to Huke. Optic's tweet reads, "Thank you, Huke, for your dedication and passion playing for Optic. We appreciate you always. Best of luck." Like the 7th time now that Huke has been dropped by this org. It's a very confusing move. If you just consider that they're dropping their player that played their best on the weekend for Pred, who then shortly after that tweeted out this back period and a picture of the team celebrating after they won champs. So it is confirmed. Pred coming in for Huke. His sojourn away from the team now, only a few weeks, only like 5, 6, 7 weeks. He is back, it seems like, for Major 2 and probably beyond. There's so much stuff to talk about in this situation, and we just don't have all the answers, because question number one I have is, what changed between last week and this week? Last week and the week prior to when Shotzi was on stream saying, hey, like, Pred's never going to come back. He's not coming back anytime soon. Like, that ship has sailed. What happened between now and then that they decided to about face in the situation? Obviously, there's a lot of rumors and speculation as to why he got dropped in the first place, thanks to, Optic not really kind of addressing it. Pred also not really addressing it. Maybe in my mind, he indicated, or the team felt, that he has done enough to remedy whatever situation or situations have happened there. He took care of his business and they're ready to move forward. And I think also probably, sort of the second piece of this from my mind is that they probably felt like, even though Huke played well, that they have the best version of their team with him on the squad instead of Huke, and they wanted to chase that form that they had last year winning champs. So like a couple of Benjay thoughts on that front. You see their placings from last season. This is obviously with Pred, and you see they had a bunch of thirds, losing to grand finalist winners FaZe in the Esports World Cup. I actually don't remember who they lost to in Major 1, I'm not gonna lie. They lost to FaZe in winners bracket, and then lost to FaZe they lost to FaZe again in the losers finals. So, okay, they lost to one of the grand finals at that event. They got second in Major 2. We remember kind of how that all went down. They won the Toronto event. They had that terrible Major 4 stage, and then they won champs. So, like, I think, their form was pretty good with Pred last year. Now, there were some matchups that they really struggled in with him. The FaZe one in particular kind of flipped on its head last year with Pred on the team. But here's my kind of read on it. I see kind of the thought process with the move here. I think, and I kind of understand where they're coming from. They feel like Pred has addressed the personal stuff that it seems like was rumored the reason that he got dropped. It was out of game stuff. That they feel like their ceiling and floor are better with Pred. I think you could debate that, but they probably, I assume, feel that way. I still think that with Pred, it doesn't really address all of the issues that they had that led to the bad performance at Major 1, right? Like, Pred is not the reason that individually Dashi and Shotzi and Kenny didn't play well at the event. Pred individually isn't the reason those players were not, had bad communication. I subscribe a little bit, not fully. I subscribe a little bit to the theory that, Pred's energy and his excitement and all that energy and comms helps like kind of elevate people in the team to sort of play the tactics they want. But on the tactic fronts we saw in scrims running into this event, I do think that this team is gonna have to do a little bit of work to catch up a little bit to the hardpoint meta, because they didn't play particularly well at Major 1. And I'm still a little bit concerned that even with Pred on the team last year, they weren't the world's best search and destroy team. So these are their stats from last season, chat. And I'll zoom in a little bit so that text is a little bit more readable to y'all, especially if you're on mobile. But you see here, their S&D form was like pretty up and down throughout the year. They had a really bad stage 1 S&D. They had pretty good stage 2 and stage 3 in search, and they obviously won one of those events. Yeah, they sucked at search at stage 4. And then they were good at it at champs. And chat, remember our conversations that we have had about OpTic this season. And I've told you guys time and time again that it's very similar to the issues they had last year. They do not do a good job of getting first blood, just like they're doing this season. They're not doing they didn't do a great job of it last season. They were pretty good though at closing out those rounds. The only difference from last year to this year is right now they're struggling on offense, but I think some of that is maybe map dependent. We'll see kind of how this first season goes. But last year, their defensive search was a little bit of a problem. So I think, the Kyler for Pred swap is still going to require other players on the team to really step up in this game mode, because I think S&D, and again, these are last year's stats if you're just tuning in, I think they're going to need to address that if they're going to want to beat, Thieves and FaZe, who I think are right now probably ahead of OpTic. Just purely on the gameplay I saw this weekend, I think OpTic's got some work to do on that front. First off, I'm curious when they're going to be scrimming with Pred. I assume he's still in Australia, because it sounds like this has happened pretty quickly this week. So let's assume that he gets back like this weekend, dealing jet lag, all that. They're not really going to scrim until... And if they don't scrim on Saturday, they get maybe max one scrimming on Sunday, because it's Super Bowl Sunday. No one's doing really 2 scrims. So realistically, they probably best scrims are Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Thursday. So you get 4 days of Pred before matches start. All right, so OpTic have actually a tricky schedule next week. They play FaZe and Minnesota. FaZe obviously, coming off that event win, and are probably feeling pretty good. And obviously that's a grudge match that I think OpTic wants to try and turn the win-loss column in their favor after FaZe kind of mollywalloped them last year. OpTic mollywalloped them the years before, whatever. You get the rivalry. And Minnesota Rock are not an easy out online. Yes, they have their own issues, especially in respawn and closing out series, but those guys always battle in a game 5. And you got Carolina and Miami and Toronto and Thieves and LAG. I will say, do not be surprised if OpTic is a little bit, and you guys don't like this word, but they're a little bit wobbly to start this stage, and they don't really play their best stuff until like the end of the stage, because they are going to be a little bit under practice going into this first weekend and the second weekend and the minor in between that, and you get my point. But I think OpTic, with Pred will be fine by the time they get to Major 2 in their building. I'm not really worried about OpTic playing good at Major 2 right now, because they have a history of pretty much making the finals of every event they host, and they either win it or they lose. Now, if they don't win Dallas Major 2, we'll get to that probably in a future video. But all right, so final thoughts on the move. I get why OpTic's doing it. It makes sense to me that they're chasing their form from last year, following the top 8 they got with Huke. And it's not really a reflection on Huke playing bad. It may be just a reflection of they think their team chemistry and cohesion and vibes and all of the package of stuff is just gonna be better with Pred. We still haven't gotten a sense of like what changed between last couple of weeks and now that they're willing to pick Pred back up. So I don't know what that's about, and we'll see if they actually address that question. They just kind of let it slide. I still think that Pred isn't necessarily going to fix, all of the issues they had at Major 1. I don't think that I am still amazingly confident long-term in OpTic's matchup versus either Thieves or FaZe based on form right now, and that can obviously change when you see OpTic kind of grow. And I won't be surprised if they get a slower start to the stage, just because they need to catch up on practice with Pred. And Pred wasn't exactly playing challengers in Australia right now, so he's got to get up to speed. So overall, I see the pathway for OpTic, but among all these things with them, this is putting on pressure for them to pull up to Major 2 and play well. If they do not pull up to that event and play well, there are going to be a lot of questions about the path that this team is on. But I honestly think they're going to make the finals of the event, and I think they have a good chance of probably winning, just based on the energy and the vibes and kind of what they will put in effort-wise going into that event. All right, so now we need to talk about Huke. Where does Huke go? And the off-the-top rumor when we were talking about this yesterday on Tommy's stream was Vancouver search. Now, yesterday, amongst all the chaos, this is a little bit later, around 7 p.m. Eastern time, Vancouver tweeted out a thank you tweet to Charlie Hicksy. We appreciate your commitment and energy with the surge. Best of luck. We'll always be rooting for you. And Charlie tweeted, grateful to Surge for the opportunity. I'm first to admit that I didn't play anywhere near well enough. Thanks to anyone who's showed support Anyone hating can SMD. I'll be back again. And look, I think Charlie's a good kid. We've talked about it. You know, he has a good head on his shoulders. He's got a good vibe and feel for how these games play, but it's just tough when you're dropping less than 0.9s. It just is what it is at this level. He wasn't slaying well enough for them to go where they needed to go. They got last. They need to lock in and make a change. Now, the current rumor, and this was dropped about an hour before we were recording this video, from Ronnie Intel, Vancouver Surge are signing Omid GG player Neptune after his impressive start to the Challenger season. The team decided last night between Neptune, Afro, and Huke. So I got a lot of thoughts in here, and obviously if you scroll down, Abuza, you know, is questioning the reporting here, but I'm always a little bit skeptical of players that do that because plenty of players have lied to the timeline, and it turns out the reported or rumor news was correct. And I also thought this tweet from Bams was pretty funny. He's saying you signed Netmate, thought that was quite an easy one to gather. Pretty funny from Ben. I have a lot of thoughts here. Thought one, why would you choose Neptune over Huke? And that's not really a disrespect to Nep because I think he's a pretty good player. And I have a feeling that eventually he's going to get his way back in the league and really get a foothold in because he is definitely talented. But to me, unless Huke turned them down, why would you not pick up the player who like literally pulled up to the last major last weekend and was shooting back pretty well? Look, I know you know, Huke's play style and there's a bunch of stuff, and he was on this team last year. They didn't really make it super deep in the tournament, and maybe there's some chemistry issues. But to me, it's like all the stuff that you're going to get with Neptune, what we know of Neptune as a player, you're going to get with Huke. And honestly, in my personal opinion, I think Huke has a higher ceiling than Neptune does and a higher floor as well. Afro, I understand because he's got to come over from Europe and there's visa things, and it's just a lot of complication on making that move quick. But I want to know more about the situation, especially at the picking up Neptune. Like, why not pick up Huke? All right, so we'll continue to monitor this Vancouver situation, and once I have an update, I'll put out another video. But we'll get more clarity on whether Huke declined or they chose not to get him, and whether or not that move is confirmed the Hicksy for Neptune thing. But let's try to figure out maybe where Huke might go next, because obviously his stock is pretty high. Atlanta FaZe, they just won. They're not making a change. Boston, I think, would be a little bit awkward. Their problem right now is that their ARs aren't playing as good as their sub players, and I would not drop Purge, even though he's not playing like some insano level of COD right now. I think he brings out the best in Snoop, so I really wouldn't mess with that right now if you're Boston. They need an AR, and I don't think Kyler really fixes that. Carolina's an interesting one to me. There is a lot of previous Huke chemistry with a couple of these players, but not always in a positive fashion. But that negative aside, you know, Reese Vivid did play a little bit better at the event, especially with one eye. So I don't think Carolina's going to try this like drop Reese, move TJ to a flex Kyler thing. So I don't want to completely rule out Carolina, but I just don't think that that is a likely move. I think the likely potential option number one is Cloud9. We've talked in depth about Sib and Attach and how poorly they both have played during parts of this stage, and Crep and Mac have been good. And I can see Cloud9 moving Mac to a flex, which virtually is a third sub in a lot of situations. Anyway, and picking up Kyler and having a Cremp and Huke sub duo, I actually don't hate that, and I think it does make their team better. And like in that situation, you are unfortunately dropping Dylan Attach. LAG Gorilla Mates is an interesting one. I think the way that this move would work is you would drop Caesar, pick up Huke. Preston would then run a full-time AR or fourth sub or whatever, or you flex by committee. And then maybe Kiz is sometimes running a second AR. It's not that really good of a fit. I don't want to eliminate it because, again, they could really use the firepower and they're in a tough position. But I just don't think it's the most clean fit out there for Huke. Thieves are obviously not going to make a change. Miami already picked up Super, and I don't think they're picking up Huke, so we'll eliminate that. Minnesota is an interesting one for me because I think that, you know, in a hypothetical, you could kind of move Estriel to more of a flex spot because he can definitely run an AR. The only problem then with that situation is then Gio's got to kind of be a main with Huke if you're dropping Paul. So I don't know. That one's a little bit awkward. Obviously, Minnesota could definitely use the firepower, but I also maybe wouldn't mess with the Minnesota chemistry right now because even though they didn't get the best result at Major 1, I feel like they're still a pretty good team. Optic, well, he was on that team, so they're not going to pick him up. Toronto, not going to make a change even though they had a disappointing event. Vancouver, obviously we just talked about. And Vegas, well, I think Vegas is going to continue running it with their squad. So really the net of me is this. I think thinking this through now, like if Vancouver is not picking him up, it's really Cloud9, or he should just chill until Major 2 at this point. Because I think all of the other fits are going to be a little bit awkward. So in my mind, we will sit back and we'll see what news we get about Huke over the course of the weekend. Of note, matches start next weekend. So if Huke is ending up on a team, roster lock is usually on Mondays unless the rules have changed. So if we're going to get news about Huke, it's going to be this weekend or it's going to be on Monday or Tuesday. And I'll keep you guys updated on the YouTube channel as we hear back from that. So yeah, long video, talked about Huke getting dropped off of OpTic, Pred coming back, the Vancouver situation, and where I think Kyler goes if he is not going to Vancouver, and maybe Nep going to Vancouver. I guess I didn't talk in depth entirely about that move. It is an upgrade for them, but I think Vancouver is still going to need Abuza and 04 to step up, but it might create more space for Abuza and he might play better because of it. So I'll talk more about Vancouver like on streams and all of that, but bit of an interesting situation. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe for more. And as always, we'll see you guys on the next one.